It was 1984. I was a little kid, and all I really cared about at that time was Star Wars and suddenly Mary Lou Retton. It's the stage of life I was in. I grew up in eastern Kentucky. I'm the only child, a very, very special person. I'm the only child of two loving parents who were not particularly wealthy, but working hard to provide a good living. My dad was for our family. I never imagined we would be rich, and how I defined rich back then was anybody with a new car. That was rich. We always had old cars that didn't work, and we would spend lots of time trying to figure out how to fix these cars. And I thought, we may never be rich, but I'll know we're rich the day we get a new car. That's when it'll happen. And one day, I remember looking out the window, my dad pulled in from work in a different car, and it was brand new. Now, looking back on it, it was a Nissan Sentra in 1984, but it was a brand new car. And I remember turning to my mom and saying, "Hey, we're rich. This is great. Let's go see the car." And I ran out, and my dad came out, and he was very proud of this new car, but he didn't pay for it. He said, my boss, Mr. Baker, he got me this car for company purposes only, but I get to use it for my job. He managed a series of gas stations around Appalachia, around West Virginia and Kentucky and southern Ohio. And I thought, look, I don't care who pays for it. I'm just glad we're rich. I want to go for a ride in this car. And I looked in the car, and it's everything you would expect in a 1984 Nissan Sentra, except a few things were missing. The driver's seat was there, steering wheel was there, but there was no passenger seat, just sort of some bolts sticking out from where the seats to be, and there was no back seat either. And my mom and I looked up at my dad, and he said, "Yeah, Mr. Baker really says he wanted to make sure I didn't use this for personal use, so he took the seats out so I couldn't take my family around in it." And he said, "But hold on. Any of you have a dad or a grandpa from eastern Kentucky? They figure it out." My dad went through our carport into the backyard, and he grabbed a lawn chair that had been sitting out in the sun for about 4 straight summers. It was one of those, back then probably $4 lawn chairs that you get at Kmart or Walmart. He took it, he marched back up, he threw that lawn chair right in the passenger side, and he took some bungee cords that he had borrowed from work from the trunk. And he wrapped them all around it, and he told me, an 11-year-old kid, he said, "Get in, I'm going to take you for a drive." And I sat in that lawn chair, and he drove me around that day. And I sat in that lawn chair actually for a year or two when he drove me to school, when he took me to football practice. Some of my vivid memories as a kid was on Christmas holiday break. My dad would take me to work with him, and that would mean driving through the hills of West Virginia in a blizzard, in a lawn chair, in a 1984 Nissan Sentra. Now today, that's technically child abuse. It's terribly illegal. But all I knew back then as a kid is my dad had created a space for me next to him where one did not exist. It wouldn't be too long that I'd be 13 and I would know more than my dad. And I would start to argue with him, and we'd had a couple years there where we loved each other, but it was just best maybe we don't talk because we started to fight a lot. And I'd forgotten, honestly, about this story until later on in life. And my dad and I, of course, we came back together. I was just being kind of a dumb teenager. And then I remembered, you know what? I don't know a lot about my dad, really, but I know one thing. He's the kind of dad who will not live in a world that doesn't have a seat next to him for his son. He refuses to let that happen. And through my life, that's been true of him no matter what. And I wonder sometimes how we learn the big lessons we learn, right? Like, what makes us the kind of leaders we are? Things like this obviously are very important. I've chosen to devote my life to helping Leadercast help you become leaders worth following. But a lot of the big important things that make us leaders are the things that happened early on that subconsciously shaped us, formed our beliefs, And this is what I believe with all my heart and soul because I'm the son of Danny Boyd. This is why. I don't believe in going on a journey without a seat next to you. I don't believe on tackling any problem by yourself. I don't believe that there's any joy or meaning in life in having succeeded to look around you and there's no one to share it with. So I think leadership is much less about being in front of people and much more about being beside them.